Whoever these bastards are, they know where I am. Gotta be prepared, just in case. Turns out doors really do work against him. It's only a matter of time before he gets in though, so might as well take this time to talk about Silent Hill 2. So Silent Hill 1 turned out to be a surprise hit, and with that, Team Silent immediately began working on the sequel for the upcoming PlayStation 2. Silent Hill 2 ended up being a launch title for the system along with another Konami game, Metal Gear Solid 2. Silent Hill 2 was Konami's attempt to turn the series into an anthology, essentially a video game version of The Twilight Zone or Are You Afraid of the Dark? As such, it stars a different cast of characters, drops the occult subplot, and the town itself has taken on a new identity, though that's explained away as exploring a different section of the town. In this game, players take control of James Sunderland, a man who's come to the town after receiving a letter from his wife Mary telling him to go there. The problem is, Mary's kind of dead, and has been for the last 3 years. But James goes to the town anyway to find out just what the hell's going on. Shortly after arriving, he meets a young woman named Angela Orozco, and I'm going to say right now that with the exception of Laura, the little girl who you meet at points in the game, everyone in this game has more issues than Dragon Magazine. Angela here, for example, is the victim of childhood sexual abuse from her father and brother. Following Angela's directions, James makes his way to the town proper, and soon has his first encounter with a monster. After dealing with Mr. Armless, James continues to explore the town, eventually meeting up with a woman named Maria who bears a startling resemblance to Mary. She decides to follow James, thinking he'll keep her safe from the monsters, and no, I'm not just talking about Armless here, but the two get separated shortly after entering an apartment building. While exploring the apartment, James meets up with Hello!
Look, plumber's crack.
This is Eddie Dombrowski, a rather doughy fellow who, well, we'll get to that later. Eddie seems to be a little off his rocker, so James leaves him be and...
What the f*** is that?
yeah. That's Pyramid Head. I will say that James at least has the smarts to hide from the thing, though you'd think he'd turn his flashlight off. And if you're curious, no, Pyramid Head doesn't appear right out of nowhere. See? There he is in the hallway.
He's just standing there, menacingly!
James soon meets up with Maria again, but she's swiftly killed off by Pyramid Head. You'd think James would be like... but instead, he's more like...
Yeah.
James's next stop is a bowling alley, where he meets up with Laura, the little girl mentioned earlier. James had an earlier encounter with her where she mentioned she knew Mary. And once again meets up with Eddie, who, in a town teeming with monsters and fucking with people's heads, has stopped for a pizza. You may notice a theme going on right now. We explore, we meet characters, we encounter monsters, lather, rinse, and repeat. But right now, we're probably the best part of the game. The Silent Hill Historical Society, which as we go through is a library, a prison, and a labyrinth. And surprise, surprise, it's in James's version of the other world, so some of the geometry is a little fucked up. See this? I'm standing on a wall. The reason I said this is probably the best part of the game is because of the atmosphere. Not to say the rest of this game and even the first game didn't drip with atmosphere, but you really feel it here with the claustrophobic corridors, the shadows seeming to close in around James, the sense of dread and loneliness. There are parts where you have to drop down holes without knowing what's down there, and when you're in the labyrinth, which is flooded, you can hear the monsters running around. And if you happen to be playing this game with a surround sound system, you go from this to this. It's only once James gets to the prison that we're back in the light world, and once again meet Mary, who's alive and well. James questions this, but doesn't get a straight answer, so he moves on, eventually making his way to the hotel on the lake. Laura's here watching a videotape, and after James watches the tape where we learn the truth, Mary, in fact, did not die 3 years ago. If anything, she died just a few hours before the start of the game. And it was because James killed her.
What a twist!
See, Mary was sick, and James couldn't stand to see her suffer, so he decided to put her out of her misery and kill her to end her suffering. The reason Laura knew Mary was because for a while the two shared a hospital room. This really brings the monster's representations to a light, but one thing at a time. James has one more encounter with 2 Pyramid Heads, but manages to put them down by getting them to shank themselves, and then he meets Maria one last time, who turns into whatever the fuck this thing is. James manages to kill her, and depending on what you've done throughout the game, you'll get one of 5 endings. All the endings are narrated by Mary reading the letter she wrote to James before she died. You have the 2 good endings, one of which James leaves the town by himself with Maria, and the other has him leaving with Laura, whom he decides to adopt since he and Mary can never have kids. You have an ending that ties this game into the first one, with James learning of the cult of Samael and hoping to use its arcane rituals to bring Mary back. You have the bad ending, where James drives his car, which one of the game's developers on Twitter confessed that Mary's body was in the trunk, into the lake, and there are times throughout the game where it's implied that James came to Silent Hill to end his own life. And the 2 joke endings. One is the UFO ending, where James is abducted and meets Harry in all his blocky PS1 glory, and the other one shows that Silent Hill is being controlled by a cute little puppy dog.
Who let the dogs out?
Gameplay-wise, it's very much the same as the previous game, so I won't dwell too much on that, though I will add one thing I forgot to mention last time. Once a monster has been put down, you have to give it a good kick to make sure it's dead. This game doesn't focus too much on fighting monsters though, but there are times where you have to shoot them or whack them over the head to get them out of the way. And speaking of the monsters, this game is probably the most blatantly obvious with its symbolism. Since this game is more focused on the psychology rather than the scare factor, the developers made sure you knew what the monsters were all about. The only one I'm not too sure about is Armless, but if I had to guess, it would be Mary's inability to defend herself when James killed her. And though the game itself doesn't dwell too much onto it, James didn't kill Mary just to end her suffering, but also because she wasn't giving him any sexy time, and the nurses and the mannequins are most definitely indicative of that. I mean, just look at the nurses here. Sure, they're grotesque, but they were still designed to look like sexy hospital nurses. Though, honestly, if I saw a nurse that looked like this, I'd put an empty needle in my veins. And as for the mannequins, well, they're quite literally all leg. And where's the star of the human reproductive system? But the big one is Pyramid Head, who has 2 meanings behind him. The first 2 times we meet him, he's violently violating another monster. But with that thing on his head and that oversized knife, he isn't very nimble, which gives him the meaning of carrying around a literal giant weight on your shoulders, in this case, guilt. Because of this, you can't really kill him like you can the other monsters. Instead, you have to drive him off or try to escape. In that sense, he's very much like Nemesis from Resident Evil 3, whom you could never truly kill until the very end. The 2 Pyramid Heads sticking themselves near the end are symbolic of James finally letting go of his guilt and forgiving himself for what he's done. But he's not the only one with monsters to deal with. Every now and then, James will enter the other world of the other characters, and at one point, when going to Angela's version of the other world, he helps defend her from a monster called the Doorman, who, to Angela, is representative of her father's oppression and sexual dominance over her. Eddie's other world is very cold and lifeless, and we see more and more of it upon every meeting with Eddie. Eddie's issues come from being a pudgy fellow. Because of his weight, he was always ridiculed, and one day he just snapped and started killing people. He's implied to have killed several people because he was worried they would start making fun of him, and he says at one point he even shot a dog and watched it eat itself to death.
What an asshole!
So can you blame James for putting a bullet in this guy? Angela dies too when her version of the other world catches fire. I think this is because the town senses the rage she feels towards her family. Yeah, her father and brother sexually abused her, and her own mother said she deserved it. What the fuck? And she allowed herself to be immolated. As I said when I discussed the endings, it's possible that James can die too by way of watery suicide. I don't know what the canon ending is, but it's nice to speculate, and people are still speculating to this very day. Silent Hill 2 is often considered the Citizen Kane of survival horror games, and it's not too hard to see why. While there are horror elements, and it mainly forgoes the horror and dives straight into the psychological aspect that Silent Hill is known for, and even turns the town into a living entity that, according to Eddie, draws people to it, feeds on their emotions, and creates monsters and a version of the other world based on what it senses from its potential victims. If you have a PS2, pick it up, but stay away from the HD remaster on PS3. Same goes for Silent Hill 3 in that regard. Is that him? So it begins.
I'm dancing with my demons. nobody can save me now. I'm holding up a light, chasing out the darkness inside, 'cause nobody can save me.